Welcome, everybody, to Survive in Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Survive in Advance, of course, is brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Make sure you check out the future of sports medicine by going to thegruelingtruth.net and clicking on their banner. I'm your co-host for the show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my co-host, member of the 1981 Indiana National Championship basketball team, and a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, after he campaigned for it for 15 years. Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
It was actually, I campaigned a lot longer than 15 years. That's okay. That's how bad it was. I laughed. I said 15 years. I wish it was only 15 years. But that's the way it goes. I mean, you know, I don't think that George McGinnis and Oscar Robertson and Larry Bird and Steve Alford, Kent Benson campaigned very much at all. I think me, it was a struggle.
All right.
I'm doing great today. That just made my day. I tell you what, I love it. I mean, you know, I love taking abuse because it makes me feel better.
I was just guessing, so.
Yeah, well, I know, but like I said, I love taking abuse because that means I can dish it out. So why don't you go introduce our guest so we can abuse him again today?
All right, and our guest, no matter how long he campaigns, will never be in any Hall of Fame except for the Iditarod Hall of Fame, which, of course, is in Alaska, and he lives in Canada, and it makes no sense, but we've been talking about it forever, so we're just going to keep doing it. Member of the 1997 Iditarod Dog Sledding Hall of Fame, Lukas Weese. How you doing, Lucas?
Oh, I'm doing well, Mike. I'm doing well.
All right. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get this show started today. We're going to switch sports. Yesterday we did football. Today we're going to do baseball. We're doing the top 10 single-season baseball teams of all time. Steve, I know that you just threw darts on a dartboard at a Wikipedia page.
Well,
Lucas,
yeah.
what?
You know,
go ahead.
This is not my strongest sport. I mean, I'm a baseball fan during the World Series. Other than that, you know, I think the funnest part about baseball actually is going to a baseball game live, and it's more fun. That's one of the few sports I think out there that, to me, is more fun to go to a baseball game than just to watch a baseball game on TV, because it's too easy to get distracted when you watch a game on TV because the game is not necessarily that fast-paced. But when you're at a game, you know, you get to do the, hey, batter, swing. You know, you get to have a Dodger dog. You know, you get to go to.
Steve's been watching the Little League World Series lately instead of Major League Baseball.
You got to go. You get to use all the, you know, you get to use all the terminology, stupid lines when you're at the game and feel good about yourself and sit out in the sun and enjoy America's pastime. So, but I'm not real intelligent here, so I'm going to be flinging and playing a little bit. I'm going to be the duck in the barrel for you guys today. So have at it, fire at me, but I'm you know, I'll stand my ground.
All right, Lucas, start us off with number 10.
Well, you know, this is a great topic. I'm going to go number 10, the 1932 New York Yankees. You know, they were not quite as dominant as the 27 Yankees, which I have higher on my list, but they were still a dominant force on their way to a title in 1932. They had 107 wins. They went undefeated in the postseason, 3.98 ERA. They had a team batting average of 286 and a run differential plus 278. You have 8 Hall of Famers on this team, including Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Bill Dickey, Tony Lazzari, Lefty Gomez, Red Ruffin, and Herb Pennock pitching staff. So I like the 32 Yankees as my number 10 team.
All right, Steve?
All right, now I'll preface everything by saying, now I have 2 favorite baseball teams, and really only 2 teams I really follow. And I'm starting to adopt a third one, that being the Dodgers since I live out here. But I'm a Yankees fan and a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan. So my list is probably going to be dominated by those squads, more for sentimental reasons than anything. But I'm going to start off a little different. I had at number 10 the 1984 Detroit Tigers. And I'm not
Damn it, so did I.
I'm not sure they should even be higher. Because when I look at the lineup, this is a team that was 104-58, 7-1 in postseason, won the series, team ERA of 3.49. Yes, I'm reading this right off of Wikipedia's Bleacher Report, whatever. .271 team batting average. But
no, I said that was Lucas that was doing that.
Yeah, well, I think we all are.
Go ahead.
But,
Just go. Just talk.
Look at this. Lou Whitaker, Alan Trammell, Kirk Gibson, Lance Parrish, Darrell Evans, Chet Lemon, Larry Herndon. I mean, these are names I know. And I'm not necessarily a great baseball fan, but I kind of vaguely remember watching this team in this series. And I did. You know why I did? Because I liked Magnum P.I., the TV show. And Magnum.
And he wore a Detroit Tigers hat.
He wore a Detroit Tigers hat, which just seems I relate the things back to the Hollywood lifestyle. But starting pitchers: Jack Morris, Dan Petrie. I mean, this is probably should be ranked higher, truthfully, in my eyes.
I disagree because of what you just said. Starting pitching: Jack Morris, Dan Petrie, Milt Wilcox. Yeah, I think either Dave Roseman. I think Dave Roseman was the fourth or fifth starter there.
Yeah, Juan Renner.
Yeah, they had a good bullpen. Willie Hernandez had a career year. Yeah. I mean, I think he led the league in saves that year. Aurelio Lopez, little fat dude, was a decent closer or a decent setup guy. But, I mean, you got Juan Berger, Doug Bear. I mean, I've got him at number 10, too, just because of the offense. And, I mean, the thing that I remember about that team is they had maybe the greatest start to a season anybody'd ever had. I think they started a season like 30-4 or something, and that was the year that Jack Morris, on the first Saturday game of the week in early April, threw a no-hitter against the Chicago White Sox at Old Tiger Stadium. So I agree. I have him at number 10, too. The other thing that was interesting is Willie Hernandez that year took home the AL Cy Young, and I believe he was the American League MVP, which pitchers usually don't win, and he appeared in like half their games that year. So I agree with your number 10, Steve. Wow. I don't think they should be higher. I think it was pushing it to put them in over the 32 Yankees just because of the starting pitching.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have him at 10.
Okay, good.
All right, Steve, number 9.
Number 9, I have the 1998 Yankees.
Jesus, really? So do I.
Oh my God, this is scary. 104. Who said so do I? Mike?
Yeah, me again.
Okay, why don't you announce this team then instead of me? Because I talked about that one that we had the same. So you take this one since we both have the same number 9 pick.
Well, this was a dominating team. David Wells, Andy Pettit, David Cohn, Orlando Hernandez. I mean, you go down Arabu. This actually, the reason I have them ahead of Detroit is the pitching. You had Jeter, I think Knobloch, Paul O'Neill was on there. I think people forget Paul O'Neill was a huge part of the 1990 Reds that won it all, and actually made maybe the biggest play for the 90s Reds. That was in Game 2 at Riverfront Stadium. I remember it was a day game. The Reds were up 2-1, and I think there was nobody out, a runner on second. There was a fly ball hit to right field, and Paul O'Neill makes the catch in right field, makes the throw all the way across the third base, I think one hop, throws out the Pittsburgh Pirates, saved it so the Reds were in one game all. The Reds went ahead and won it from there. My only question with the 98 Yankees, I know a lot of people think this is the greatest team of all time or one of the greatest teams of all time. And, of course, they're the winningest team in the storied history. They went 11-2, swept the Padres. I just question the competition here. I don't think San Diego was a great team. I mean, they were a good team. They were the best team in the National League there. But I just don't know if there's the depth there. I mean, if you look at teams we're going to talk about, like the 19s, any Yankees team usually had a Brooklyn Dodger team that was a great team they had to beat. If you look at the Reds and Dodgers in the 70s, they had to compete with each other, plus the Phillies and the Pirates. So I think that the reason this team's at 9 for me, if you look at stats, they probably should be top 3 or 4. But the difference to me is I don't think that the depth of the competition was there that was there in the 1970s or the 1980s or the 1930s. And I think that is what puts this team at number 9 instead of higher on the list. Steve?
Yeah, let me ask you a question before we go on to Luke's number 9. Would you consider Jorge Posada probably one of the best Yankee catchers of all time? Does he rank up there that high, or was he just a
What
great
do you mean by
catcher
that
team?
high? Because to me, when I think of Yankee catchers, I think of Bill Dickey, Yogi Berra, and Thurman Munson.
Right.
I think Posada. You got, let's see, Mickey Cochran. Mickey Cochran was a Yankee, wasn't he?
Was he a Yankee or a Tiger?
Tiger. He was a Tiger. So after those 3, I don't think that he's anywhere in the stratosphere of those top 3. But I think he would be in the next group. He was a very good catcher, but I don't think you put him up there with Bill Dickey, Thurman Munson, and Yogi Berra. I mean, really, I think Dickey and Berra are top 10, catchers of all time. And I don't think Jorge Posada is anywhere near a top 10 catcher of all time.
All right, Lucas, go and screw this whole thing up now with your cheesy number 9 pick.
The 1992 Toronto Blue Jays.
that is the worst imitation
No, because it was like the worst imitation I could come up with. What could possibly be your worst pick ever? But go ahead.
Well, the Jays aren't in my top 10. They're not, because I don't think they're a top team of all time.
Because Mike and Steve would have made fun of me if I'd have put them there, so I didn't put them there because I didn't want to feel bad.
That's complete nonsense.
Mike and Steve hurt my feelings all the time, and it's not fair. Go ahead.
Are you done, Mike?
Yeah, really? Are you done, Mike?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done, guys. Go ahead. Okay.
84 Tigers for me were number 9 for the reasons that you guys both mentioned. I'll make it quick.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something after you said you'll make it quick,
really,
but you didn't.
Really quick.
All right. So number 8, Lucas.
And number 8 for me, I'm going to go with the 1998 New York Yankees. Look, they were, as you said, an incredible team. But I agree with you, Mike. I think the competition for me at that time just wasn't as good for me to put them higher. I mean, I know other lists online definitely put them in the top 4. I disagree with that, but they are a great all-time team. You can't beat the lineup that they had and the pitching. So I put them at number 8.
Well, didn't they have the best regular season record, too?
Yeah, they had 114 wins.
And see, this is my comparison. I had this with me and Steve had an argument off air. Not that me and Steve talk off air because I have a life. But if me and Steve talked off air, we talked about this. We talked about perfect seasons and why you guys rank them so high. My perfect example of why I wouldn't would be kind of like this team, or the comparison of Rocky Marciano, who's the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world, never lost, and Muhammad Ali. Who thinks Rocky Marciano was better than Muhammad Ali?
No one.
Now, the point is this. Even though Ali lost a few times, he beat and fought probably the highest level of competition in the history of the heavyweight division, where Rocky Marciano beats Ezra Charles Jersey Walcott. They were both great fighters, but that's all he did. When you look at Ali, he beats Liston, Foreman, Frazier twice. I mean, the list goes on and on with him. So I think that comparison is relative to this 98 Yankee team.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I still live by the theory that teams.
Yeah, so you think Rocky Marciano was better than Muhammad Ali?
No, boxing's a different sport because it's a boxing match can end in one punch. I mean, you aren't going to end a baseball game or football game or a basketball game in one shot or one field goal unless it's the last play of the game. But boxing you can go out and throw the first punch of the game and pound somebody to the ground and they're out 10 seconds into it. That's Sonny Liston. So and it's not taking away from anything, but it's a different measure of winning. The only way you'd ever do it if you took, those two guys in their prime, put them in a ring together and let them duke it out. I think everybody would probably bet on Ali, no doubt, but you never know. But it just takes one punch.
Because he beats the better competition. All right.
But you just have to land one punch, so you can't. All right, my number 18. Again, this is where my naivety comes in a little bit, but I went with 29 Philadelphia Athletics.
I actually had them much higher.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But 104-46. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll let you guys break it down. I went with the because you're both going to have them higher. I'll save it for you guys to talk about up the road.
All right. Lucas, did we already get the number 8 from you?
Yes.
No, I'm first number 8.
Oh, were you? Lucas, did you give us number 8?
No, my number 8 was the Yankees. All
right. So it's up to you, Mike.
All right. Number 8 for me is the 1907 Chicago Cubs. Tinkers, the Evers, the Chance. I think it was one of the great teams of all time, especially defensively. They only had a .250 batting average, and anybody out there, Tinkers to Evers to Chance, by David Rapp. I just got the book like a week and a half ago, and I will have him on a guest of one show, whether it's this one or just a book review show. David Rapp, Tinkers to Evers to Chance. What was that?
It will be this show.
No, you don't know anything about baseball, though.
Oh, I know Tinkers have a chance.
But it's a great book. But you look at these guys, they were more than that. They had a phenomenal pitching staff. And I believe that they won back-to-back titles, which, of course, it took a while before they won another one. I think the main pitcher on this team was Mordecai Brown, whose ERA was well below 2. And if I remember right from reading the book, because I'm not looking at Bleacher Report like some people, but if I remember right from reading the book, I think all 4 of their starting pitchers' ERAs were under 2. The offense, while not great, was good enough. And, I think this team shows you that you can win baseball games with pitching and defense. And I think to this day, every year they talk about this team, if they make the playoffs, they're going to be hard to beat because, they got a great pitching staff. And this was a team with a great pitching staff from top to bottom. So I'm going to go with the 1908 Chicago Cubs. Let's go to number 7, Steve.
All right, before we get to number 7, number 8, 2 things about I looked at that Cubs team, but I was scared to death that if I ranked them, I'd jinx them for another 100 years.
Who cares? They've already won one. They've got enough. They don't need another one.
They won't win again for another 100 years if I did.
Well, good.
And in terms of me sitting here staring at the Bleacher Report, I hope to God you want your pilot going over his checklist every time before he takes off and make sure that he has all his facts in front of him and straight before he fires that plane up.
Don't take all your facts from Bleacher Report, though.
Other people's stats they want to do.
Are you going to give us number 7, or are you just going to go on a rant now?
Number 7, I had the 1970 Baltimore Orioles.
I actually had them slightly higher. I had them at number 6.
Yeah. 108 and 54. Let's just talk about them. 7-1 in postseason and won the series. Team RA of 3.15, which is great. Kind of a low batting average, team batting average, 257. I thought that's a little low based on some of the other teams.
But you still had Boog Powell, Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson.
Yeah, a couple Hall of Famers, 3 Hall of Famers. Jim Palmer anchored their pitching staff, Dave McNally, Mike Cuellar.
Hey, how about this real quick, Steve? What happens if the Cincinnati Reds are so stupid as to trade Frank Robinson in the early 1960s? Frank Robinson would have been a Red during this series possibly. Could have changed everything.
Would have been more dominant than they were. It would have changed a lot. Certainly, because Frank Robinson is one of the greatest baseball players of all time, as far as I know, in my nativity.
You're right.
And Brooks Robinson, obviously, one of the greatest third basemen of all time. Who doesn't love a guy named Boog Powell? How can you not love a guy named Boog Powell?
And you had one of the greatest pitching staffs of all time that year.
McNally, Palmer, Cuellar, Arden, Dick Hall and Pete Richard and his relief pitchers. This probably was my first foray into really watching a World Series, as I remember. Because I was a Reds fan, and
the thing you got to remember is Brooks Robinson. He was the difference in the series.
Right. Yeah. And then Pete Rose thinks he's Brooks Robinson, decides he wants to play third base at some point in his career.
Pete Rose never played it like Brooks Robinson.
No, he didn't.
No.
So that was my number 7 pick.
All right, my number 7 pick has Pete Rose at third base, and that's the 1976 Cincinnati Reds. I really wanted to put the 76 Reds ahead of 75 just because of how dominant they were in the playoffs. But I think the difference here is the Reds team ERA went up going into 1976. So I think the pitching on 75 was a little better, and, of course, we'll have 75 later. So I know you guys are probably going to talk about this team at some point also, but, Steve, you want to talk a little bit about them?
But which team?
The big
76 Reds? The 76 Reds? 76 Reds? To me, I had the 76 and 75 Reds listed together higher up. Because to me, they basically were the same baseball team for all intent and purposes. The 76 squad, 102 and 60, the thing about them is they went undefeated in postseason play. Won the World Series and never lost a game. Had a 280 batting average. Just an all-star Reds lineup. Rose, Griffey, Morgan, Foster. Everybody knows these names. Bench, Perez. Sheila Geronimo. I mean, who doesn't know any of those people?
Call you back when the show's over.
You know, Gary Nolan, Pat Zachary, Billingham was on that. Gullett, McEnany, you know, as relief pitcher. And who can never forget? Now pinch hitting for Manny Mota, Pedro Borbon, or pitching for Manny, you know, that was from the movie Airplane.
I remember
Raleigh,
that.
Eastwick,
But
yeah.
the thing about the 96 or the 76 Reds was how dominant they were in the playoffs. So, and people forget that Philadelphia Phillies team would go on the next 2 years to get beat by the Dodgers. This is how deep the National League was then. I mean, the Phillies, you had Mike Schmidt. I mean, they were loaded. And when you look at it, the Phillies were a viable contender for a decade and only won one World Series during that time. That was in 1980 when they beat the Kansas City Royals in 6 games. The other thing that stood out to me about 76 was Johnny Bench had probably the worst year of his career that year, batting only .236. And then he comes into the World Series and bats like .537, hits 4 home runs, I believe, and he hit 2 of them in Game 4 to basically wrap the series up. And probably the biggest key to the series was Game 1, the Reds dominate the game. They win it 6-0. Don Gullett comes out in the 7th inning with an injured arm. And then Game 2, which was the only competitive game in the series, was won on the bottom of the 9th when Tony Perez, I think, singled or doubled. I think it was doubled off the wall in I think it was actually the 10th inning to win that game. The series was pretty much over from there because you're not coming back from 2 games down against them. Lucas, who do you have at number 7?
I got the 1907 Chicago Cubs. I mean, for the reasons that you mentioned, Mike. Just to add on to what you said, team ERA was 1.73, and all those 4 main starting pitchers, overall, Mordecai Brown, Carl Lundgren, Jack Beister, they all had just crazy ERAs. I mean, you know, all below 2. So, I mean, team was at 107 times. They were undefeated in the postseason. Arguably one of the greatest dead ball teams in the dead ball era. So I like the 1907 Cup. I'm at number 7.
Max, can I call you back in about a half hour? I'm on a show right now.
Hello.
Okay, to number 6. So,
but
we're
all
on
right,
to,
so we're up to number 6. And I'll go ahead and start that off because Steve's already talked about my number 6, which was the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. I think this is a team that kind of gets forgotten. So the question is, they're not even the best team of that decade, I don't think. They may be the 3rd best team of the decade because you had the Oakland A's, of course, who for 3 years in a row won it. But the thing that stood out to me was just Palmer, McNally, Cuellar. I mean, those 3 guys, I think, all won 20 games. As Steve said, I mean, and the reason that I had the Cubs down here and the Tigers down here is the same reason that I probably had the Orioles down here, you know, outside of the top 5 was because of the batting average, the .257. But I think people also forget this is a team that, you know, overcame a lot because in 1969, they were huge favorites. And they get beat by the New York Mets in 5 games. Nobody thought the Mets would be able to beat them. So they came into 1970 with a ton of pressure on them. This is also the first team that had to win an American League Championship Series. I mean, people, I think, forget that, too. They played the Minnesota Twins in the ALCS, beat a really good Twins team, and then they beat a great Reds team. It was a Reds team that was probably in their infancy of being a great team, but I think the Orioles have to be on anybody's top 10 list. Steve?
My number 6 was the 61 Yankees. And I think this was a great baseball team, 109-53, 4-1 in postseason. But I'm not sure if this was a great baseball team or a great, you know, duel between Mantle and Maris, and then Maris's duel with Babe Ruth. So I don't know what the sentiment is with this baseball team. You know, they won the World Series, they dominated, played, but a lot of the talk that season wasn't about them being the dominant team. It was more about the duel, but the home run duel between Mantle and Maris, and then ended up being the duel between Maris and Ruth. And I just repeated myself there, so I apologize that. But you know, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra was on that team still. Elston Howard, Clete Boyer, Maris, Tony Kubik. I mean, you know, Whitey, pitching staff anchored by Whitey Ford, Ralph Terry, Bill Stafford, Luis Arreo is right-handed relief pitcher, Jim Coates. So I mean, it's one of my favorite Yankees teams because I love the story about Mantle and Maris. And certainly I think that, it's a great Yankee team, considered one of the greater Yankee teams out there.
Yeah, actually, I had them a little higher. I had them at number 5, so I'll talk about it with you for a little bit. But
okay, go ahead.
The thing was, it wasn't just Mantle and Maris. I mean, Elston Howard was a great player. I think he had a solid year that year. Yogi Berra, one of the greatest catchers of all time. Moose Skowron, who I think hit around 30 home runs that year.
I got to say something. Can I interject? I've had lunch and played golf with Moose Skowron. There is not a cooler, nicer guy.
Is he still alive?
No, this was back in probably 5 or 6 years after I graduated. We used to play the Phil Harris Golf Classic in Linton, Indiana. And Moose was a regular and a good friend of Phil Harris's. And all the former players came because Linton was very close to Bloomington. And I got to hang out with Moose Skowron. And there was not a cooler guy in the world than Moose Skowron. Listening to his baseball stories was so cool. And at the time, I didn't know who Moose Skowron was because I wasn't that big a baseball fan. But now when I hear his name thrown around, I said, God, I remember Moose Skowron talking about this. And I remember seeing on TV and seeing it years. And I said, he told me this story personally, and I've heard this story from him personally, sitting in a picnic bench, drinking Jack Daniels and Coke during the course of the day on a golf course with him. And what a great guy. So go ahead, finish your story. I apologize.
And then I think you've got Whitey Ford, who was one of the greatest big game pitchers in October there was, had his greatest year. I think he won 25 games in a Cy Young that year. But the thing that I think set this team apart was Ralph Terry, who had a career season. I think he was like 17-2, 16-3, something like that. So I agree. This is a great team. This is a team that batted .263, which is a decent average. But when you throw in the power this team hit with, an 109-53 record, they beat a really good Reds team in 5 games that had Frank Robinson as the star at the time. So, I had them at number 5. Lucas, who's your number 6?
Mike, before you get to Lucas, I don't lose something to shut you out. What do you think who overshadowed who? Do you think that the home run battle overshadowed this team a little bit? Or do you
I think it always will. I mean, you had it with the 1998, the Cardinals and the Cubs. Nobody cared what the teams did. They were watching the home run battle. Right. And the thing here is, I think, from what I remember, that Mickey Mantle actually got hurt for a while, so he actually played less games than what Roger Maris played. And the other thing is this. I mean, Mickey Mantle was a crowd favorite. So everybody's cheering for Mickey Mantle to do it. And plus, Maris did this. I mean, people, want to put an asterisk by it.
Right.
People want to put an asterisk by it, but he did it on the last game of the season, so the pressure there was huge. Most people were Babe Ruth fans, didn't want, Roger Maris breaking the record. If they wanted anybody to break it, it was Mickey Mantle. So Maris faced a ton of pressure. If you ever seen the movie 61, which I think HBO did.
That's based on what I know.
Yeah, it was a great movie, and Woody had to overcome. So I think anytime somebody breaks a record like that, it's going to overshadow anything. But when you look at this team, I mean, this was a great baseball team. Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. You just look at the record. So I think they belong in anybody's top 5 or 6, at very worst, top 10. Lucas?
Yeah. My number 6 is the 1929 Philadelphia Athletics. Mike, I know you'll go into it more, but I'll just quickly say this. I mean, the Yankees dominated much of the 20s, of course, with Babe Ruth, but here come the Athletics in 1929 and win the AL pennant by a whopping 18 games over those same Yankees. They arguably have the best 3-4-5 in baseball history with Mickey Cochran, Al Simmons, and Jimmy Foxx. Their pitching was great with Lefty Grove, Rube Wahlberg, and George Earnshaw. So I got the Athletics as my number 6.
Yeah, and I actually had them at number 4. And if I remember right, just go off memory, I think Grove, Earnshaw, and Wahlberg won 20 games. If not, Wahlberg was close to 20 games.
Wahlberg got 18 games, but George and Lefty got 20. Over 20.
Yeah, so when you look at them, I think they're my number 4, and the reason they are and the reason they're ahead of teams like the 84 Tigers is just offensively and defensively they were so good. As you said, Al Simmons, Jimmy Foxx, I mean, Mickey Cochran, that's 3 guys that I think all batted like close to 350 that year. And they go in, and Babe Ruth of the Yankees were still the dominant team in the 20s and 30s. But as you said, in 1929, the Athletics win the pennant by 18 games over them, which is absolutely amazing, and that's why I got him at my number 4. Steve, have you done number 5 yet?
No, my number 5 team was the 32 Yankees. Maybe not quite as dominant as the 27 Yankees. It's still a lot of the firepower. 107, 47, 4-0. Ernie Combs, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Bill Dickey, Tony Lazzari. Pitching staff: Gomez, Ruffing, Pennicock. This is a team that Babe hits 41 in the 30s. Gehrig, is coming into his own at 34 home runs. Lefty Gomez, 24-7. Roofing 18-7, all, a little higher ERAs, but this team had so much firepower it didn't really matter because they just would overwhelm you with their bats. But I think this is one of the great Yankee teams of all time. So I put them at number 5.
I could see them at the bottom of the top 10. I can't see them that high, and I think the big difference between this and 27 is I think Bob Musial was no longer in left field on the team in 32.
No,
I think they replaced him. I can't remember who they replaced him with, but it was nobody near as good as Musial.
Yeah, Ben Chapman was your left fielder.
Yeah, Ben Chapman, which was a guy that may drive in 100 runs, but he's probably only hitting 5 or 6 home runs.
Right.
So I could see the pick being I think it's a little too high, but that's your opinion. You're entitled to it, Stephen. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is the 39 Yankees. And it may be a little low for some people, but, this was the start of the Joe DiMaggio era. 106 and 45, 4-0 postseason again. Lineup included DiMaggio, Dickey, Gordon, Roofing, and Gomez are still around pitching for the Yankees. Largest run differential in baseball history with a plus 411 runs scored versus scored against. Future Hall of Famers: DiMaggio, Dickey, Gordon. Just a strong, great baseball team. 2 more Hall of Famers with Ruffing and Gomez. So, what I like this is the transition from the DiMaggio Ruth era into the the Gehrig Ruth era into the DiMaggio era of the Yankees, and I thought it was a dominant team. I think a lot of people are going to have them higher, probably.
Yeah, I've actually got them at number 3. And that's a team that's 106 and 45. In 1939, I think they swept the Reds in 4 straight games. The Reds actually came back and won the World Series over the Tigers in 7 in 1940. So that'll tell you that was a Reds team with Ernie Lombardi, one of the great catchers of all time. But you look, Bill Dickey, one of the greatest catchers of all time, Joe DiMaggio, Joe Gordon, right there you've got 3 Hall of Famers. You look at the starting rotation, maybe not real deep, but Red Ruffing and Lefty Gomez were 2 of the best pitchers in baseball. And when you look at them, they had a team RA, I think, right around in the low 3s. And they had a team batting average right around 290. So when you look at them and the run differential of 411, I've got them at number 3. Lucas, who do you got at 4?
I haven't done my number 5.
Okay, 5. Come on, you got to catch up, Lucas.
No, you're the host, Mike. You got to tell me when to say it. The number 5.
I know, but everybody keeps taking the same stuff I got that's just 1 spot higher. So go ahead.
Yeah. So number 5, I got 70 Baltimore Orioles for the reasons that you mentioned. Number 4, I got the 61 Yankees. Again, just a great team, and you guys have talked about it in length. And then number 3, 1930. I agree with you, Mike. The 1939 New York Yankees. I just think they're a top 3 team in my mind, but they're not as good as the 27 Yankees. But they're in my top 3, and I think Steve's point is really accurate about how this is the beginning of the great Joe DiMaggio era of the New York Yankees.
All right.
Hello?
I think it was 47 home runs, 175 RBIs. I think it's one of the greatest lineups in history. Herb Pennock was the main pitcher. 10 and 44. They swept the World Series in 1927 with a run differential of 376. I believe the team ERA was right around 3. But the thing that stood out to me that I remember about this team was the team batting average was well over 300. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was close to 310. You had Ruth Gehrig, Tony Lazzeri, Earl Combs, guys like Bob Musial, who I think is a very underrated player. And then you had a starting rotation with Wade Hoyt and Herb Pinnock. Steve, what do you got at number 2?
I didn't get my number 3 yet. And you kind of cut out, Mike. Lucas, was the only one that got cut out, or did you miss what Stevie picked at number 3 too?
No, I just picked number 2. Number 2 was the 27 Yankees. Number 3 was the 39 Yankees.
Okay, my number 3. Well, I didn't give my number 3. My number 3 was the 76 Reds. I think this was the second of 2 incredibly dominant years of any team in baseball. And I think we've talked a little bit. Maybe we'll talk more about it. But my number 3 pick was the 76 Reds. I think we've already talked about him. Somebody had him ranked lower. So
I had him at like number 7 or 6, something like that. Yeah.
So your number 3 was the 27 Yankees, right?
No, 39 Yankees. Number 2 was the 27 Yankees.
Okay, all right. So my number 2 was the 75 Reds, which you can interchange 75 and 76. That's when I fell in love with watching baseball, and Johnny Bench became my favorite player. Just to watch that team just dominate for 2 straight years like they did. It didn't matter who they played, where they played them, when they played them. That lineup was an all-star lineup, and you did not want to watch all 9 batters come to the bat. And the pitching staff was just full of characters, full of great pitchers, all of them with different personalities. So my 3 and 2 were 3 was 76 Reds, 2 was the 75 Reds.
All right, Lucas, number 2.
Number 2 is the 27 Yankees, just like you, Mike. Just to echo what you were saying about the batting average, their team batting average was 307. And that just shows you how dominant their lineup was. Their team ERA was 3.2. So they had 2 Hall of Fame, pitchers in Wade Hoyt and Herb Pennock there. Great team, 110 wins. They were undefeated in the postseason. They're my number 2.
All right, so I guess we know who everybody's number 1 is. Steve, you would be the 27 Yankees, correct?
Right. Yeah, and I think Yankees. Yes, I think that was the most talked about baseball team ever. Murderers Row. I just don't think any time anybody talks about a baseball team and being there, and all the experts will all tell you that in their eyes the 27 Yankees were the most dominant, powerful, padded baseball team of all time. But you can make the argument for the 75, 76 Reds right along there. It's a flip-flop. So, but for all the reasons said, I want the 27 Yankees as the top team of all time. Safe pick.
All right, so I'd imagine me and Lucas are both going 1975 Reds.
Correct.
Me too. And this is my difference, all right? If you have these teams play each other, the difference in baseball would be the difference because McEnany, Bourbon, Eastwick, that bullpen I think could make a huge difference. But the other thing is this. I think, sure, you had Ruth and Gehrig, 2 of the greatest players of all time, but I think you had 2 of the greatest players of all time on this Reds team in Morgan and Bench. I think there's a case to be made that Joe Morgan is the greatest second baseman of all time. Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher of all time. I think that's unquestioned. And then you've got at first base Tony Perez, who was one of the biggest clutch players in baseball history. The thing that stood out to me in the 1975 World Series, I think Perez was like 0 for his first 12. And then we get to a huge Game 3. It might have been Game 5, but I think it was Game 5, where it's 2 games all, and he hits a mammoth home run. I think it was like his first or second hit of the series. You go forward to Game 6, he hits a huge home run. Game 7, the Reds, people forget, are in the 6th inning down 3-0 when Tony Perez hits a 2-run home run that gets them back in the game. You look at Ken Griffey Jr., who was one of the best hitters in baseball at that time. I think in 76, he just barely got nicked by Bill Madlock for the National League hitting title. He was a .330 hitter during that time. Pete Rose, the all-time hits leader, and one of the biggest scumbags ever. So you got good cop, bad cop. Then you got George Foster, who I think Foster, I may be wrong on this, but I think he was the only guy to hit over 50 home runs in a season during the 70s. He hit 52 in 77. You had Dave Concepcion and Cesar Geronimo, who were both really good players, hit the ball well, but Concepcion was as good as anybody I've ever seen defensively. Pitching-wise, Don Gullett was a stud. Gary Dolan was good. The thing is, the team ERA was like 3.3 that year, which was like third or fourth in the league. But I think what people forget is guys like Gullett and Nolan don't have huge records where they win 22, 23 games because Sparky Anderson was the first manager who really used his bullpen. And, I mean, used it big time. So you might have Don Gullett come in and start game 7, but after 3 or 4 innings, you're already putting in guys to fit what you want to do to the Boston Red Sox lineup. And I think the other thing that separates us is this, and it's just like we talked before. I know the Yankees win in 4 straight, but to me, I have less questions about a team that plays in the greatest World Series of all time, is down 3-0 going to the 6th inning at Fenway Park, and they fight back and win the game with Joe Morgan hitting a bloop single in the top of the 9th to win the World Series. I mean, to me, that Red Sox team was a great team. I mean, they didn't have Jim Rice. He was hurt, which I think may have played a part in this. But you had guys like Fred Lynn, Carl Yastrzemski, Luis Tiant, who was a huge big game pitcher. I mean, he even had some big hits in that World Series, especially in Game 1. And when you look at them, Game 1, the Reds lose 6-0, but that was a game that was 0-0 into the 7th or 8th inning before the Red Sox broke it open. Every other game in that series was nip and tuck and went down to the last inning, the last pitch, and this team persevered and won it. Now, I will also say this. Maybe my reason for having them number 1 is not so much even being a Reds fan, but I actually saw this. I didn't see the 27 Yankees, and if I'm a Yankee fan growing up, I'm probably picking the 27 Yankees, and I'm sitting here and harping on how many home runs and RBIs Ruth and Gehrig had together. So I think, actually, when it comes down to it, I'd probably call it a tie at number 1, just because I think that me being a Cincinnati Reds fan and seeing this probably plays into why I have them at number 1. And it's really hard to ignore 2 guys that combined for over 300 RBIs in a season with Ruth and Gehrig. So I think I would probably call this a push, to tell you the truth, Lucas.
Yeah, I'd say this. The thing about the 75 Reds is my limited knowledge of baseball, really, but you can name every player on that squad, the whole starting lineup and the whole pitching staff, and I would know that they were a Red that year. I mean, where the 27 Yankees, I couldn't, other than Luke Gehrig and Ruth, and I'm not sure I would flat out know who all the other players were. All the principals were, but on that 75 Reds team,
yeah, but that's kind of my point here, Steve,
right.
because we saw it. So it's easy to see. I mean, I can tell you I've heard of everybody on the 27 Yankees, but I haven't heard of them as much as the 75 Reds, and that's because I grew up with the 75 Reds, and they're more. That's why I say that when you look at it, either one you want to call number 1, I'm good with.
Yeah, you're right. It's a tie between. And I probably was just a Yankees fan that's a little longer than a Reds fan, but because I'm a little more into tradition and history, and the Yankees, were more dominant for a longer period of time.
Really, the Reds have the greatest tradition in baseball. They're the oldest team, Steve. Come on.
Well,
just because they didn't have the most money to buy players.
Yeah, and that's
or to have the best farm system to get the best players, or trade for all the best players. Anytime you
mention a great player in baseball, he's probably passed his way through the Yankees somehow, some way, somewhere. And I can't say
Johnny
every
Bench
time,
didn't.
Johnny Bench didn't, right. And that's why you say it's a tie, because Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher of all time in any of our eyes. And, but they both teams produce great players, great talent, great teams, and they're the 2 most tradition-rich clubs in all of professional baseball.
So I would say I would, in a 7-game series, I would pick the Reds in 7, unless Pete Rose was betting on the Yankees.
And there you go. You're not going to let the Pete Rose thing die, are you?
No, because you never let it die, because one of you always brings it up almost every show. All right, guys. Tomorrow we are going to talk about Hard Knocks with the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to talk a little bit about the problem that Maryland University has had with a player recently dying, and also maybe the history of the NCAA and why the NCAA does not step up and try to do something about this to curtail it, and how it is not the first time something like this has ever happened in NCAA football. So you can check us out tomorrow on Survive and Advance with that. Steve, do you have any final words?
No, great job. I learned a lot today, guys. Today was a real educational thing for me because they said I'm not that strong in baseball, and I think that's the funnest thing about our shows. We try and diversify ourselves a little bit, so we're not always just talking about what we know. We make ourselves a little bit smarter, which makes at rendering opinions, and we also bring some different insights to our fans and the people who are listening to us right now. So it was a great show today, guys. I enjoyed it. Lucas, enjoy your input. We're going to have you back tomorrow, Lucas. You going to join us again tomorrow?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'll be checking up on Hard Knocks and, of course, providing my insight onto the Maryland situation.
Yeah, well, check the solar flares too to see if your cell service works. Okay, out there in Toronto, it's a damn solar flare that's screwing your phone.
I don't know why Steve's got to pick on Lucas every day, but I'm against it, and I talk to him all the time about it. It just does no good. Remember, tomorrow you can check us out on Survive and Advance.
Mike's gonna go take a dump, so we got to get up.
Also, on the gruelingtruth.net, we will have the Cincinnati Bengals show later tonight with myself and former Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl linebacker Joe Kelly. Also tonight, we will have the CFL Weekly Pick'em show with myself, Brian Schmidt, and four-time Grey Cup winner Robert Drummond. And then again tonight, we will have Inside Boxing Weekly with myself, Jeremiah Pricer, and John Einreinhofer. So remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes. What?
One thing.
What?
Also, last night you posted the golf show.
Well, we talked about that all day yesterday, Steve.
Okay,
yes,
right.
We have a golf show with Lukas Weese, co-hosted by Steve Risley.
I'll take that. It's an honor.
All right. You're going to have to, since you interrupted my close to the show.
I'm sorry. Close the show.
All right. All right, guys. So make sure you check us out on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, Lukas Weese, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.